UAP, Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military projects, false flag alien invasions, PSYOP, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join the discussion now on UAP Crossfire.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to UAP Crossfire, where we argue about the biggest mystery in the universe. Are we alone? Before we start, I'd like to introduce our co-host of this show. It's right down at the bottom there. He's none other than our flight expert, Commander Cobra. Hello, Commander.
Hello, sir.
How are you tonight?
Good to see you. It's great to finally be back with you on the show. And
we'll have a great show.
I really appreciate you two, and big shout out to Don, who hopefully is going to listen. He's had a rough couple weeks, and we've all been checking in on him, and we're hoping he's on the mend. He's
you stole my thunder because I was going to say something about Don just after I produced our spiritual expert, Dan Carlson, also known as the Padre. Hello, Padre.
Hi, guys. Great to be with you this evening. Nice to have this chance to get together and try to solve the mysteries of the universe. Looking forward to a great show tonight.
Yeah, we got a great guest coming up, too, and that'll be awesome. So I want to just quickly say two things. One, I'd like to say our best wishes for Don.
And Vicky.
Don hurt his back.
Prayers for Vicky, dealing with Don.
Oh, okay. Prayers for Vicky, because we all know how Don is when he gets into pain or he gets miserable and stuff. But anyways, I want to wish Don the best. He'll be out for a couple of weeks. He has had an injury, and we all feel for him because the type of injury that he has is very painful, and there's not much they can do until it just heals itself. So, Don, if you're listening to the show, we love you. We miss you. And we'll try to do our best to get those sons of bitches. Okay.
I just wanted to come on to show you guys something. This is totally odd. I was messing with it last night. It's for those that don't use it, I get it, but I have Alexa Plus, okay? Now watch, I just want you guys to hear this. Alexa, can you tell me about UAP Crossfire? Who are the hosts?
UAP Crossfire is a podcast that discusses unidentified aerial phenomena. The hosts include John Decker, Chris DiPerno, Dan Carlson, and Commander Cobra. They explore impactful unidentified aerial phenomenon cases and share their research findings.
Is that cool or what? Even though
it's your address, I'm sending her flowers.
So I just wanted to show you that.
I don't know. That's been about the nicest thing anybody's ever said about me. So
especially on the internet.
Yeah.
Anyway, have a great show, and you got a great guest.
Whoa,
where are you going?
Hit the road. Before you get running there, J.J. Johnson. Hold on one second.
You don't get to run.
How was Pine Bush?
Yeah.
Pine Bush was excellent. You all know Marianne Robb. You might be familiar, Dan. They have UAP PD, and hopefully we'll get them on as guests on a future show here. But they did tremendous. Of course, we all know what Mark can do, Mark D'Antonio.
Absolutely.
And because he hardly comes up to this area except for Ancient Aliens Live, Nick Pope. So a lot of people came out to see the event. It was the best Pine Bush to date.
Figures I had to work.
There's always next year.
Yeah, it'll be raining, and we'll be down at the Flying Saucer Cafe.
It was pouring all day. It was, oh my gosh. But it cleared up for the nighttime. But at least we were inside. But yeah, it went really well. So looking forward to next year.
Congratulations, Bill.
Billy, you've been under the weather a little bit. How are you feeling?
Well, not too good, but hanging in there. I wouldn't miss this for anything. So it would take a lot to get me out of this seat to do this show, especially with your awesome guest, which I cannot wait to hear what he has to say and bring up. So this should be a fascinating show. I think there'll be people tuning in just to see what he says.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys.
He doesn't hold anything back. If he wants to throw a punch, he throws a punch, and ain't nobody going to stop him.
I've known John for quite a few years when he was doing Phenomenon Radio on KGRA Digital Broadcasting with Linda Moulton Howe.
It was a great show.
And the one thing about John, he's always going to tell you what's on his mind. He's direct, and he's I don't want to say the word. He doesn't shoot any bullshit. Let's just say it.
In fact,
I like John because whatever he says, you could take it to the bank.
I think Linda and John were my first guest appearance on a show on KGRA when I had started out. I think they had.
Look at that. Well, without any further ado, I'm going to disappear so you guys can go and bring John on.
All right. Well, before we do that, I just want to say, hey, put your prayers out to these victims of the airline crash that took place. It was a horrible crash. Our prayers go out to all these people. Nobody wants to see stuff like that happen. Commander, that's a bad one that they just had recently. And, maybe you could explain a little bit, because I'm kind of scared of flying now.
Well, again, this is purely conjecture at this point without a lot of facts. Looking at the video, reading a lot of the stuff that's there. As you remember, our unfortunate crash that we had over at DCA in Washington, D.C. A few months back, that absolute horrible crash there. I was pretty close on some of the things that went. So, and all of this early on until you get the details to come out, and then that has to really be handled by the professionals in an accident investigation. Just looking at the picture and what I have seen, and it's amazing the kind of things that are available in the public realm now. It seems to me, and I'm very, very careful to say this, being a pilot myself and still an active one. It looks like there may have been some errors in that area of the pilot. And why I say that is very experienced pilot from everything I could learn online. Very early rotation, and that speed, the VR speed, which is where you bring the nose up and leave the ground. It was a very warm day. It had very low wind, and the altitude. There's a thing called density altitude. When the temperature is high, the air is thin, and then when you're physically further above sea level, and this airport has some altitude, that contributes. So those two factors, and it's actual physical density. It's how many air molecules are in the air. And the higher you go, there's less air molecules, less density. So that requires more power. Very heavily loaded airplane because of the length of the trip the direction they were going requires to have the aircraft be able to burn extra fuel for the direction that they're going. West tends to have a wind in your face, so you're fighting that. And noted by a number of people, and noted the same thing in there. There is a condition where you generally have flap settings. I couldn't see the front part of the wing from the videos that I looked at, but the back part of the wing looked very clean, meaning it looked like everything was retracted. So that would have been pretty dramatic. It's either an oversight or maybe there was a technique there that the pilot wanted to accelerate faster and not have the drag. One of the things that's very demanding in this situation on a heavy takeoff, accelerating, often in these cases, pilots will stay fairly low to the ground once they get in the air to accelerate, and there's an air cushion that develops above the runway about one and a half times the length of the wing. It's called ground effect. And what it does, it's a cushion of air because it's pushing down on the surface, especially like over a runway or flat surface. And it allows you to accelerate. Helicopter, we used it all the time. Same principle, to help us accelerate to get into what we call clear air, or ETL, effective translational lift. In an airplane, this would allow you to get more kick for the power setting that you have. And then you climb, and then you try to retract the gear as quick as possible because of the drag. One of the things that's very, very devastating is that a lot of times the inner gear doors and other things that are there, if you're very close when you take off at that speed, and you can calculate it, and of course the computers on board the airplane will also give you an actual conditional speed that will tell you that. You may not have a sufficient thrust to be able to continue to accelerate. So a lot of times you keep the wheels down for longer, eat that drag, because the inner gear doors, I'm sure you've all seen an airline, are all those extra things that come open up in the air so the gear can rotate up and in, and then all these doors close up for it to be aerodynamic. That's extra drag that you have to overcome. So if you're at the edge, if you're at the precipice of performance, and as I was saying to you guys off air, and there was a policy, I don't know if it's there, but many times in the airlines, because it's a very intensive industry for maintaining as much of the capability of the investment in the aircraft, they don't do what I do in my airplane, what I do in airplanes. When I need power, I will pull all the available power I need. In the military, you're taught to go to that power setting where we call it military power, or if you have an airplane that has afterburners, you may even select that. And that is to maximize thrust in a situation that you're not getting it, and then you can recover. Those factors could all combine here, but it looks like what happened is he is not able to maintain flight and immediately starts to do a descent. The only thing I can think of that it could have possibly done, and he may have not had terrain, the pictures are very hard to tell, rising terrain, even slightly rising terrain around the airport, would prevent you actually have to push your nose down and dive towards the ground, believe it or not, to accelerate the airplane and get more air over the wings, and then slowly start to work yourself back up when you're in one of those very heavyweight conditions, which it appears that he was at. It's a horrible tragedy. We'll see what comes out in the investigation on that. I know that the preponderance of what has gone on in the last 6 to 9 months for airline flying is really attention-getting and quite horrifying, quite frightening.
Sure.
But I have to tell you that even with these horrific accidents, airline flying is still the safest movement of transportation on this planet, believe it or not. It's still in the high 99 percentile of the number of people that are flown and the types of accidents that occur. In the airline industry in general, their philosophy is you aim for absolute perfection and you land on excellence, because you can't achieve perfection, despite what they'll tell you in the AI world, and I'm sure that'll come up later, since we can't go a show anymore without talking about that. But that's really, it's still a very safe way to go. But there are a lot of factors that are coming together that are making a lot of people nervous, and it's justifiable to be nervous. I mean, the situation with air traffic control, we've heard about Newark, we heard about New York, the kinds of things that are on there, and this really incredible demand for flying puts a lot of pressures on the system.
Just one question I have for you, and then we'll get on to the other subject. But I saw there were technology is such now that if the airline goes bad or something happens, that the actual passenger compartment can jettison itself away from the airline. They're coming up with some kind of technology that parachutes come out or something. I read that in a magazine, and I'm like,
there has
really?
been talk for years of having these systems. There's nothing like that out there right now.
Doesn't the B-1 bomber have something like that?
B-1 bomber actually uses ejection seats. The F-111, the fighter bomber F-111, used a capsule. They did not have parachutes. They did not have ejection seat. The whole front capsule of the plane would depart, and then a parachute would open, and it would land. They would land in the capsule. Very interesting technology. I could go on for hours about that particular capsule. It was actually a lifting body and some of the things that happened during testing with that airplane. So in general, no. And one of the really big problems for that is the cost and weight penalty for putting those kinds of systems on there. So what you do is you build in redundancy into the airplane, and then you build in thrust capabilities. As you can tell, in this particular airplane, you have enough thrust in one engine to fly out if you lose the other engine. That's how we're building the airplane. That's how it has to be certified as well. There could have been something that had something coming down the pike, but quite honestly, the only airplanes out there right now that are flying with a parachute recovery system are very small, light civil airplanes that have the ability that a ballistic parachute. I had an airplane many years back that you could do aerobatics. You're supposed to wear a parachute in aerobatics. It wasn't big enough to wear a parachute, so they built the parachute into the back part of the airplane. And if you got out of control, you could ballistically fire the parachute, and the whole airplane would come down shooting all. And there's a couple airplanes out there right now that use that technology, and some that have been adapted. All
right. Well, thanks, Commander. And it's always good to know if travel is safe nowadays. It's a crazy world, and
I'm not the right guy to ask, Chris, because if I don't fly myself, I very rarely will get on the airline flight. And it really has less to do with safety. It's just that I can't have my blood pressure go any higher. And it starts with the difficulty of just getting a ticket, okay? And what you have to go through. And then
so much easier
and I don't like to take a cheap shot at TSA, but TSA and I, we don't mesh real well. I know that there's probably a great number of wonderful people, but I found a lot of stuff to be nonsense. And I was on the inside of that op when TSA was created, as you know, when I was working in DHS. So I got that issue. And then you get on the plane and all the stuff that's going on with air traffic controls and delays at the gates and all the stuff that's going on. And then the absolute creme de la creme, the absolute human parade of absolute insanity that goes on in airplanes. Now, I've been real fortunate that I haven't had to deal with it, very much up front. But I mean, you have flight attendants who are there to protect your ass while you're flying, getting punched in the head, and people want to open doors, and people fighting over, I want your seat. It's not it's the seat I wanted, but I didn't get. I mean, I know how I would react if I had somebody. I hope that I would take the Christian path and go, fine, whatever, let's just go. But I also know that I'm falling short many times. And in that situation, if you get me at just the right time, it's not going to go well. It's just not. I hate that. I avoid it.
See, and this is why I like trains, Commander, because if somebody wants to open the door and jump out, hey, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. We'll mark it down. We'll let the conductor know. Yeah. Sometime about 15, 20 minutes ago, this guy jumped out the door 15, 20 minutes ago, and they'll go, okay, thanks. We'll let the people know. I agree.
Yeah, it's not going to stop my martini.
Let's go to the club car. Let's go to the observation car and count how many cows are in fields,
Yeah. Hey, you never know. Maybe they have an extra dinner I can eat or something like that afterwards. I don't know. But I like trains. I'm a big train guy. I get on the train. And that's it. All right, well, let's get to what our show is really about tonight. We can be talking about trains, planes, and automobiles all night if we wanted to. As you know, the Wall Street Journal published an article about how our U.S. government has been pushing the UFO story. That's what's really flying around the skies are man-made. Really. I'm not sure about that. True, maybe most of the sightings are ours and can be explained, but all of them? Nah, I don't think so. So tonight we have U.S. Air Force retiree John Burroughs, and I'll tell you, I love John. I did an interview with him a couple of days ago. It was fantastic, and I asked him to come on the show again because people, you got to listen to this guy because he breaks everything down into common sense, and he really tells you, and he doesn't pull any punches. He just tells you the way it is, and you either accept it or not. But also, he just wrote a book. And we're going to be discussing not only the journal article, but John and Toby Martinez's new book called Signals from the Threshold, The Race for UAP Technology. And I will tell you something, folks, get the book. Now, I will tell you this, there's some shenanigans going on because I called John the other day and said, John, I read your book. It's fantastic. I wanted to put a review. And they wouldn't let me put a review about his book. So, folks, if you do get the book, try to get a review in there because it's an amazing book. So let's bring on John Burroughs.
Oh, no, we lost Cobra.
No, I'm still here.
Oh, John, how are you?
You're muted, John.
You're muted, John. See, the damn U.S. government doesn't want you to talk.
No. I'm just looking at the breaking news. Israel is striking Iran as we're speaking right now.
With airplanes?
Say that again?
Israel is launched an attack on Iran right now.
Well,
I
there
was
goes
just
the
checking
stock
it
market.
offline. That's why my camera's down.
Okay.
Yeah, it's they according to Bill, he's starting to put up links and everything. I didn't want to open up the CNN link, but it appears it started. So before we get started on anything else, Godspeed to everybody tonight that's conducting this operation, because they're not going to talk about it right now, but it's almost guaranteed that we'll have some of our own airplanes involved in this, air crews involved in this.
You know, this is breaking news, John. Can you tell a little bit about what's going on and your thoughts about it? Because we've had great conversations about this whole thing.
Oh, well, most of our conversations was would they do it or not? And I personally was 50-50 on it. I mean, he was trying to negotiate a deal. Well, somebody's putting something up.
That's Axios with their latest story.
Israel strikes Iran, explosions in Tehran, sirens in Israel. So the games have started.
Yeah, and these are for keeps, guys. I mean, this won't be like the last couple where they tapped them. If they're going to do this now, it's going to be all out. So they're going to take out the nuclear sites. They're going to take out their military capabilities. And to be straightforward, nothing against Israelis, but they're going to need our help to do it. So,
do you think we'll actually strike too, or play more of a support role, John?
Oh, we've got, what do we got over there right now, Chris? B-52s, the B-1, and the B-2. So, and we got two carriers over there. They've kept the Nimitz off, said they're still in the Indo-Pacific, but then tonight they admitted it was in the area. So, yeah, we'll be involved. I mean, our tankers will definitely be involved, but the Israelis don't have the aircrafts to take out the nuclear sites. So I highly doubt that they would do this strike without the fact that we're going to hit the nuclear sites. So.
John, I'm going to go one step further and say that there's going to probably be some regional support with them as well.
Yeah, that's why I told Chris to look at the 410th AEW. I was over there for one of those operations, but yeah, there definitely is. They're tired of the Iranians, but this is the final thing that goes all the way back to the Gulf War with what happened with some of the ordnance in the countries it went to, and Iran got the majority of the nuclear stuff. And for whatever reason they gave it to them, I don't know, but they've decided that they want to be a nuclear power, and the world doesn't want that. So,
you know, I will tell you this, since when I was in the service and just before I got out, when the mullahs took over, they've been killing Americans, and nobody's really paid a lot of attention, but they tortured a CIA officer, and his body's never been found. That's one guy that they tried to find, but I don't know if people remember that the Iranians, the mullahs, took all the embassy staff hostage and held them for almost a year until Reagan came in.
444 days.
Yeah. And so, I mean, ever since, they have looked at us as the enemy. And, you know, when you get into a religious war like they talk about, there's no peace about that. And never been peace with Iran.
well, I can say what we're going to talk about, but I'm going to say this, okay? I was over there for Tora Bora, and then I came back for the invasion. Okay, the truth never comes out. The press never gets the full story. They're given a narrative. They put it to the American public. But even more, that where I want to go with this is simple. War is hell, and when you go into war, it's for keeps. And if you don't, then more people get hurt than if you do. So my take on this is, if we're going to do it, let's finish the job this time. You know, we've got too many resources, too much money, too much going on. If the decision's been made, then let's finish it. Now, the only possibility to this is the United States doesn't get involved only because Israel wasn't publicly told not to do it, but Trump didn't quite want it to happen yet. But the only thing that surprises me, Commander, you know what I'm talking about, Friday in the Middle East is the holy day.
No,
And
well,
Trump had made the comment he didn't want to hit him on the holy day. So.
right. Well, the holy day is Saturday.
It's Friday.
Yeah.
That's
no,
what
it's
Friday.
Saturday. Saturday is their Sunday. Saturday is it's the Sabbath. Saturday Sabbath. Friday is Saturday there.
Well, then I guess changed because when I was over there Friday, everything, the bases we were at, everything shut down.
It's their Saturday. Thursday night is their Friday night.
Okay. All right. So
but Saturday is the Sabbath for those dates.
Okay. All I know is that he didn't want to do that during that time frame. So, I mean, but they are. So they're hitting them during, it'd be like hitting us like they did in Pearl Harbor. So that has a tendency to rile the public up, you know, even though maybe they don't want the regime in charge and they're not happy with everything. It still will cause some problems for some of these regimes in other countries too that they were hit during the holy time. The other factor is up until now, the Israelis, when I was over there for the different operations, we kept the Israelis out of it because of the ramifications for that would happen like Jordan and Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and stuff.
Right.
So
the coalition wouldn't hold together, and the coalition was Arab states.
Right. So evidently all that's off the table now. So
some things have changed, John. You had the Abraham Accords, which had normalization of a number of nations with Israel. You had 7 October that occurred, and that was purposely orchestrated by Iran through Hamas to keep Saudi Arabia from normalizing its diplomatic relations with Israel. That was one of the goals of that operation. So you made a remark earlier about the press and the press not being told. The press from our time when they were digging for that stuff is not intellectually curious about anything. The last 4 years had to prove that. they play along with whatever is passed to them by it's not press, it's propaganda. It's got nothing to do with journalism. As I know the word.
Well, that's true, but that kind of started back under Obama, and there was a CNN report. That's when CNN completely flipped and lost their minds. They went over and were covering Syria and what was about to happen, and they went over. She did some digging, gathered some stuff, going to come back and put it on air, and the DOD stepped in and stopped it. CNN agreed to it, and they stopped it. And she started complaining about it, and she got fired. But from that point on, the press has never, ever been independent anymore. I mean, the one agency to me that still had some independence, but they've even lost it now, is 60 Minutes. They don't really do anything that's going to be controversial anymore. They don't want to go out there and rock the boat. So yeah, the press is dead. It's propaganda, like you said, to fuel both sides. And so there we stand. And I mean, and we could segue right into UAPs. That's what's going on with that right now, too.
I agree. It ties in so perfectly with, what we were our plan to get into, and we will. But this fits hand in hand with what's happening. The new media is how you're going to get that. The new media is what's telling you what's happening right now. There'll be handheld, uplinked, although it's difficult in Iran to do that. There will be reports that are going to come from there that's going to show you what happened. There'll be flight aware and some other stuff that's using the tracking of airlines that are now getting out of the way of airspace. They'll be showing you where the Israeli tankers took off, because you can't do these kind of operations without tankers. And as I said before, you're going to have more and more stuff that'll piece together. And the military, all these militaries, all these governments are using all these tools. What they can't control, they're going to flood, i.e. what I've said for years that's gone on with the UAP, UFO process that we're living through. And then what they can control, they're going to seed the ground with that. And the ground has been seeded for this for a while. And a very public remark about that we're pulling people out of embassies is a good example of what's happening.
Wow. Okay. Well, John, I will tell you, I hope it's not a police action. I hope we go in there and do the right thing and get it over with quickly and get it. I was in the Vietnam era. When I was a Marine, we were trained to be broadswords. Go in there, destroy everything, and then go away. And then Vietnam came and was nothing more than a police action. They wanted us to act more like police officers than anything else. And that just wasn't right. So, in order to save lives and stuff, let's get it done. Let's get it over with and get it quick. That's my feeling about it.
Well, Chris, I'm going to dovetail real quick on that. I understand what you're saying. And I think one of the better things, if there's actually a better thing that's come out of this, is our distaste for casualties, our political process, our public opinion of not happy is what has driven us to develop the kinds of things that we don't have to do what we did during World War II, where they bombed cities night after night, day after day, with no precision, trying to break the will of people. And that didn't work. There was a theory, and it did not work. It did not break the back or the spirit. The Brits demonstrated it during the Battle of Britain. The Germans were still producing underground right up to the end. What broke it is you broke their economic means. If we take these targets out precisely with minimal amount of collateral damage that goes on, that is a good outcome from years of doing that. But where I completely agree with you is this business of pinpricking doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
This has to be a bludgeon, and it has to be so absolutely complete that that two sand grains aren't sitting the same way they were earlier. These new sites, and they have to come to an end.
War is terrible. War should be the last resort. But if you're going to do it, I agree with you. Make it like a parking lot. Don't kill innocent civilians. I truly believe in that. But take out their oil infrastructure. Take out their nuclear sites. Take out their command structure. Take out their communications and leave it a parking lot. And say, if you start doing stupid things again, you're going to get stupid prizes again.
Hey, John, one thing I want to throw in your direction. How important in your mind to demonstrate to the PRC is this attack?
Well, if it was any other president, I'd say very important. But the Chinese already experienced him the last time, and they pretty much know that if he says he's going to do something, he'll do it. So, yeah, he just got their attention again, because I'm getting texts now from everywhere that they just struck. So it's clear there's an air operation in place. It's just whether we're involved or not. But I just want to go back and say one more thing. When I went over for the Gulf War, the second one, I was at a base. I can't say where I was. Tommy Franks came in. He was in charge of the whole thing. And he gave a fiery speech after he had negotiated with the host nation for what we were going to be doing there. And he said, if my president orders us to war, we'll go to war. But we weren't prepared we weren't totally prepared. And he told us that. We had the air power in place to do what we needed to do from the air. We didn't have the troop strength, and we still don't. We don't have it anymore. We don't have a big enough army to occupy even a country like Iraq and do it properly. It took forever. Once they went in, they eliminated the immediate threat, but they couldn't occupy the country. So, like, if people think I'm thinking we should go in and hold Iran right now, we don't have the capabilities to do it. We do have the air power to take out their facilities and their military installations, their Scud missile sites, eliminate their Navy and all that other stuff. But we don't have the ground strength, even if we mustered everybody right now, to even occupy Iran.
Sure. And I think the taste for occupying is not there.
Right.
I think 10 to 12 years of what went on in Afghanistan and Iraq.
But that was all purposely done to keep the industrial military complex going, Commander. I mean,
no disagreement.
I flew over on a mission for Tora Bora, and the mission I was on Evergreen Airlines, and the pilots had been flying nonstop since 9/11, and their company had been told to triple in size from what they were, and they were almost non-existent. They were down to 4 airplanes at that point. and they didn't have enough pilots, and they have to recertify them. But they were told it was going to take 20 years. That was 3 months after 9/11. How the heck did they know that the war would go 20 years? Back it was in February of, right after September was the 9/11, and in February they knew. So they knew right then and there the war is going to go for 20 years. Now, the other factor that I've talked about, and I'm not afraid to talk about, was I was in and out for 30 days for Tora Bora, and I was told before I left I'd be back for the invasion of Iraq. Well, if you go back to that time frame in March, Iraq wasn't even on the radar. It wasn't even being talked about being invaded. They were already preparing to invade Iraq. They were bringing all the equipment, switching it out in Kuwait and everything else. These wars nowadays are different than the old wars, when countries were legitimately like World War II and I, and even Vietnam and stuff, as far as there was more of a cause. These don't have a true cause. There was no reason to invade Iraq after 9/11. There was a reason to go in Afghanistan, but there was no reason. He was contained. And then we didn't even go in the right way. We didn't have the true strength to occupy after we took it out. And you just can't help but realize this is to keep the industrial complex going, the military complex going. You can't have 9 aircraft, 11 aircraft carriers, all these fighter squadrons, all these bases, if there's no threat, if there's no real threat all the time. And that started after World War II, when Eisenhower warned us and said, we need to up our military. We just don't need to go back to where we were before World War II, but we don't need to expand it so much that it becomes more of a complex, and not just we have more military capabilities and we can, pull through, as far as draft people and do all that stuff. And once they did away with the draft, we just don't have the manpower anymore. So
I'd like to ask a question of both you guys, and because I'm a ground pounder, so I'm not privy to air and stuff like that. Do we have the actual explosive ordnance or the ordnance to take? I was watching these videos of these deep underground bunkers that Iran has. And do we have the ordnance to actually destroy those bunkers? I mean, they're pretty deep underground. I mean, if you look at them, they're like miniature cities almost under there.
Well, he's a pilot. He could probably give you a better idea.
Commander?
Yes.
We do have it.
Yes.
Non-nuclear.
Yes.
Would it be layered, though, Commander, where they had to go in and hit it at different munitions at different layers, kind of like what Top Gun showed?
When you start playing around facilities that do this kind of work, they're doing this kind of manufacture, part of the reason they have it is for protection. The other part is for containment. You breach the containment, you're not going to be able to do very much in there because of what you're moving around. The physical materials that it becomes very dirty. That's part of it. And as you alluded to, Chris, there are other weapons, and I don't think that would be anything that's in use. Again, for anybody who's listening, I have no insight. Haven't sat in any briefs on any of this. I'm just looking at it from what I can see. There are extremely high-end weapons that have nuclear capability to do that detonation. I don't think that's in use. So there's a couple things that happen. If you're able to bottle up areas, and remember, the Iranians are in a they've been in the hurt locker from the last serious attack that the Israeli Air Force created on them. It knocked out almost all their air defense capabilities, and it put serious dents into their command and control capability. So their ability to do that, and the mullahs are barely holding on to a large part of that population. A large part of that population that's still, for the older folks, people my age, that remember what it was like under the Shah. And I'm not saying he was a great guy, but their society was a lot more open, a lot more culturally Western, where most of the Arab world wants to go. I know they're not Arabs. I understand they're Persians. I'm very familiar with the area, lived in the area for a long, long time. So my point is, you don't want to have something so devastating that you can't allow what I think they're hoping. And if we ever are back in the game where the CIA and other agencies are doing the work that they're supposed to, you are working with those groups to try to get them back to where they once were. An incredibly important culture in Persia. an incredibly advanced culture going back to biblical times. And for the particular topics that we talk about, long pole thinkers on extraterrestrials and related subjects that we talk about going back into their ancient manuscripts. So it would be wonderful if they were not under the yoke that they find themselves under. So you don't completely wipe it out. But if you can control access points, if you can devastatingly hit that, and as you alluded to, Chris, if you take out the oil capability and cripple them, they got a large infusion of money, of capital from the last administration. And we didn't get a lot out of that. I don't know what the goal was. I guess the goal possibly was to buy time or buy peace or whatever it was. Not a long, good track history of that happening.
Didn't work.
Now you have this activity. You have a large amount of money that went. You have these proxies that are working in Lebanon and in Gaza that have caused this stuff that's going on. And they had the opportunity and they played along to come up with a peaceful resolution, and I think they felt that they were at the right place, that they could get their ability to do this. And I'm strongly, I have no inside track, but I strongly believe that many of the Arab nations in that part of the world are tacitly supporting this activity because they do not want to live under the threat of what's going to happen.
Well, that's true, but they're scared. They're scared of what the population will do. I mean, it's no different in this country. We have a divided country right now, and there's one group out there protesting and burning and doing all that stuff. So these governments have to be a little bit concerned about, how their population will act if Israel does the operation and stuff. So, I mean, it's got to happen if they're not going to have news, and it's at the breaking point now. So. I mean,
yeah, my phone is blowing up right now. I'm sure your guys' phone.
Yeah, I've gotten 3. AP's confirmed that airstrikes have taken place over Iran. But it's interesting. They also said Trump was on the line talking with members of Congress when it started, and they took him inside. So he obviously may not have known this was about to happen himself. This may be a total Israeli on their own. They went on their own. They're tired of waiting. They've been promised for years that Iran wouldn't get a nuke, and they're probably right there. So they could either wait or do it themselves. We'll see.
Roger, where are you at on all this, besides saying prayers up there?
Yeah.
Well, I've been reluctant to say anything and demonstrating my ignorance. But, Iran has been operating terrorist proxies throughout the Middle East, and they're responsible for so much death and destruction. And what we're going to see here now is a potential for the region to kind of have a renaissance or rebirth. Because if memory serves me correctly, I think is not Iran mostly a Shia country, and Saudi Arabia is Sunni. And in terms of the overall distribution of Shia, which tends to be the more militant faction of Islam, there's a potential here to empower the moderates among the Arab and the Islamic countries and really just pull the rug out from under those nations, especially, well, if you think of the Houthis, I mean, they only exist because of the financial help and the weaponry coming from Iran. And so this has the potential to cripple them. It has the potential to maybe pave the way for the expansion of the Abraham Accords, which could be a very good thing, I think, in that region. So that's kind of my 2 cents worth.
Can I ask you a question, Father?
Sure.
Okay. According to what I've heard and seen, if the Abraham Accords go through, the rapture starts.
Okay. The Bible tells us that several events will happen right up to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And among these is there will be a period of peace where there has been strife. And you will see, the scriptures say that everyone will be saying peace, peace, and then suddenly the end will come. So we're living in some very, very interesting times. with the potential for people to become more drawn to faith as they look at the events around the world seem to descend into chaos, and they're going to be looking for an anchor. And I would just encourage them to grab a Bible and start reading and look at what is predicted and see how things are going to unfold. We're going to have to go through a pretty rough time before peace is finally restored. So as far as a rapture event, that could come at any time. People say, are we in the end times, Dan? And I say, the end times started the moment Jesus' feet left the mountain when he ascended into heaven. And the clock's been ticking ever since. No man knows the day or the hour, so we just wait and look at the signs. Bible does say that even though we won't know the name or the day or the hour, we will know the season by looking at the signs going on around. We certainly have a lot of blinking lights on the biblical control panel here going off, telling us that these things are prophecy being fulfilled.
Yeah, just when I got the Stark marker going in my favor, it's got to be the end of times.
Oil's up right now 4%. It's already shot up 4% on the operating. So it's going up. So, but anyway, let's segue into UAPs right now because there's a lot we don't know yet. I mean, the thing is to me, I said this, and then we can go into technology and stuff, that when Iran launched those 100 missiles, they were using UAP technology. Israel was to bring them down. And the fact is that it was interesting in 1980, which nobody knew at the time, but Reagan first introduced SDI when he became president, which was in 81. He started talking about it. But they were working on SDI technology right outside the back gate of Woodbridge.
John, I must ask you to please elaborate on that. Israel using UAP.
Well, that's I am. I'm trying to go to that point. Okay. So at the time that they were SDI partly has to do with lasers, plasmas, and targeting plasmas and a lot of other stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Stuff I could talk about that's not classified, but they use lasers, plasmas, targeting plasmas, and tracking devices to bring down these missiles. In the last month, there's been all kinds of articles coming out. Boeing is in the process of developing what they call a time dilation bubble that will protect troops, tanks, aircraft, and part of what SDI was about was drones, plasmas, and a bunch of other stuff. Now Trump just talked about the Golden Dome. So if you watch those videos that they showed when those missiles you could see something blue being moved around and a laser moving it around, and then there was an explosion. So UAP technology, UAPs are different than nuts and bolts UFOs. But they've gotten drugged into this, but a UAP and what we've been talking about and Congress has been being briefed on is different than a nuts and bolts UFO. It's a craft, and biologically, everybody seems to think that somehow whatever is in it will be quite a bit like biologically like we are, something like we are. UAPs are different.
Are you suggesting that directed energy weapons were used?
Yeah, that if you know the history of warfare, right outside our back gate, they were working on the death ray they called it, which is lasers. When they were working on that, they discovered radar. So they were working on that on both of them, which tie into SDI, which now will be part of the Golden Dome program, right? But there was a system called the LAND system, which was actually in the lighthouse, because they used to say the lighthouse was involved, but it was because they were using the nuclear power from the Sizewell nuclear power plant just up the coast to drive all this technology tests. The key to this is there really is some kind of intelligence that even Project Condign said exists. It's a UAP, and it's intelligent in nature. It's able to do a lot of the stuff that's being reported on now. And we've been working on this for years to understand this in its different parts of the world and then be able to weaponize it. So, like, for example, the Salas incident in 1967, right? It wasn't just there that they had an incident. There was across all the northern tier bases had incidents, right? there's a generator called the Marks generator, and it's evolved over the years, and it's been involved in with radar systems generating power and everything else, and it's some of the generator power they're using for some of these weapon systems now. Well, it was tied in, and it's called the SAGE system, was tied in directly into those launch sites. And all across these launch sites, the Northern Tier bases had SAGE systems and SAGE radar. And between the Marks and the SAGE radars, they could create plasma and plasma EM plasmas. And then the Mark system could be used. So that Wall Street Journal report wasn't wrong. The EM generators are capable of creating plasma and EMP type frequency weapons and stuff like that. So, but then they said, well, where was the generator? It was tied to the SAGE system, which was part of the over-the-horizon system that the SAGE system was part of. But we also had a major over-the-horizon radar in Michigan. I don't know if Commander can verify some of that.
John, you're spot on a lot of the stuff that I know only tangentially from the activity. And the integration, SDI, although it never went to space publicly, at least,
publicly,
to the level that we understand, the vast technology breakthroughs that came out of that, twofold. The then Soviets lost their minds trying to keep up with it. They didn't know what to do with it, and that just rapidly accelerated their problem. And we also had what happened during Desert Storm. It was a 1-2 combination. And Desert Storm demonstrated the absolute precision, all the things that were going on, plus some other things that were going on in the background. And I'm not just talking about stealth. Stealth was but stealth absolutely brought down what the then Soviets sold worldwide as a capability, a huge SAM network that controlled the airspace that would prevent anybody in. And, we had airplanes that were flying and dropping munitions down smokestacks, or they were putting it in the precise window that they wanted to drop it into to do what they wanted to do. So what has gone on from then is what the precipice we're at now. Not only do we have that technology quite greatly refined, but now we have the computing power, partially AI.
Quantum.
We have quantum computing, but you actually have the computing power, and more than anything else, the software refinement. That's where all this comes down. Software is the number one issue that all these weapon systems fight with. And when you hear things like the F-22 is, although it's a great airplane and probably the best fighter in the world, you can't do upgrades on it. The F-35, for as horribly run that program is, does present something that no one else on the face of the earth can do. And I guarantee you tonight, F-35s of the Israeli Air Force are doing this or receiving this. They can get updates to the software while they're in flight. So when they find some kind of intel that tells them something that they need, anything from programming to where and how to activate systems to operate better on up-to-date stuff, from satellites, from ground intercepts, from other airplanes, from submarines that are listening, you don't have to wait for the plane to land. You can actually update that in flight.
But let me ask you something, Commander. Stealth technology involves plasma technology, yes?
In some instances it does, others it doesn't. There's a few paths to do that. There's obvious evidence, John, and we've talked about this offline a little bit, that they are creating plasma fields around aircraft. And I use that term loosely because I don't think that they are actually doing like the F-15 Strike Eagle that you see behind me in my picture, where there's air flowing over there. They're changing the physics around a vehicle that is in the air.
What would that cause, Commander?
Well, it causes a lot of things. If you do it correctly, you can have an airplane, a traditional airplane, and you have a field, and it's now absorbing energy and it's basically like a mirror. It's reflecting out, but it's not showing up as anything else. It's cloaking. The other technology, things like you saw with the...
Hey, whoa, can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Let's talk about cloaking for a minute. What would cause the cloaking effect? A time dilation bubble, correct?
Absolutely.
Right.
There's good math to go with that.
Right. So they would create the effect using a classified generator that creates the plasma effect, which then creates the time dilation bubble, which I can relate this is Star Trek.
Right.
When the Romulans would come in and cloak, they're not cloaking like people think. They're not just disappearing. They're going into a different time frame. They're slowing down time-space metric tensor. They're slowing down or speeding up. So when they disappear, they're still there, but they're in a different dimension. And one of the problems that they were having was the computing couldn't keep up with when they cloaked and reappeared. And cloak's not the word, but that's the word that people would understand from Star Trek. So you're going along, you go invisible, but to keep up, it changes you're in a different dimension, a different type dimension. And when you pop back out of it, you're supposed to be over here and you end up over here. And the computing power up until quantum came online couldn't keep up with it.
And the power sources weren't reliable.
Right, weren't reliable. But that started with the Marx generator,
right,
and has evolved into the generators. Like you know about the Zumwalt, right?
The Zumwalt.
The Zumwalt class.
Why don't we hold that because we got to take a break here. We're coming up on break. And I'm like forgetting about the break because I'm listening to these great stories here and stuff. This is amazing stuff. I think you solved the technology problem. I'm sitting here going, hey.
Well, I'll start it off when we come back on the other side why we're not seeing it in mass production. I've told you guys this in the past.
I'm sure you'll probably say the same thing. I've been told the same reason. So
right. Well, we're going to be right back. We're going to take a short break here, and we'll be right back with this great interview with John Burroughs and Commander Cobra and stuff. Take care. We are back with our guest tonight, John Burroughs, and we've been talking about a lot of things: technology, the war in Israel, everything. But I planned for it, and stuff. I just threw away my notes and burned them.
So a lot of what we're talking about ties into the book, and it ties into UAPs and the Wall Street Journal.
So, John, you made a quick mention. Let's get that in. We didn't get in the first hour.
Right.
Talk about the book.
Okay.
That title.
Okay, let me make sure. Chris, do you know I have it in front of you? I want to get it right because I'm doing 3 books right now, guys. So,
well, the book's name is Signals from the Threshold: The Hidden Race for UAP Technology, folks. It's being sold on Amazon. It's a great book, and I encourage everybody to buy it.
Well, this is the first of 3, and it just shows people that UAP technology is real. In fact, it shows some of the people that are working on it. Commander was about to talk about why it hasn't been in mass production yet. One of the things that I talk to people behind the scenes on, some still working in government, is the fact that the Pentagon's still into nuts and bolts weapons. They want to use the real bullets they know that work, the bombs that work, and everything else. They're not afraid of diverting some of their money into more exotic technology, but they still want to stick with what works. And this exact technology, though it's growing by the week, month, and year, is still not completely reliable like a bullet is, or a missile. But here's the other problem they're running into, why they're going to have to expand this quickly. Commander, tell me if I'm wrong. It's getting real expensive to shoot down $300 drones, some of this stuff. So we launch $1 million missile to take out something that's worth thousands of dollars. And you can only produce them so fast, and it starts to drain the bank account real fast when they're using. It's just what Ukraine just did to Russia. They took out 30 of their aircraft with a few $1,000s worth of technology and stuff. So
yeah, I saw the updated numbers. They definitely tapped 30. They destroyed at least 11.
Right.
They took out quite as many, but I'm sure they put the hurt on a lot that was there. And so
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, John, what you said is correct. Every time we've had in history major breakthroughs, we have been slow to accept that because this is how we've always done it, and B, we always fight the last war. And we've got that sucker won every time we start the new one and get our asses handed to us. So those two things together are what hurt us greatly, and I agree with you. But you allude to something historically. Airplanes. No one wanted airplanes into battle. They're useless. The technology is too flimsy. That's not how you fight. When they changed from line abreast, large mass formations from the ancient times to maneuver warfare, all these things that have gone on. And then technology comes in and it gets embraced and we go forward. So I'm going to postulate to you, John, I want your take on it. We have great capability. We probably cannot mass produce it easily with all the other things going on. But if one country or one small group of people has a breakthrough that's so destabilizing to the rest of the world, the rest of the world is not going to sit around for that. If we change overnight or in a very short period of time that petroleum is not the major economic force that runs the world, everything from the fuel in our vehicles, aircraft, ships, to the plastic that we wrap our food in and how we grow our food and transport it and keep it clean and safe and do all those things. If we change that overnight, that's destabilizing. If you demonstrate clearly that you have such a great capability, this used to come up all the time in all the great sci-fi of the 50s and 60s, where someone demonstrated the capability. There's still quite a few nukes out there that a country may say, these guys are so far up the totem pole, we have got to take the shot now while we have a chance, because it destabilizes this nonsense that we've agreed that we're going to try to conduct ourselves. I think, John, what you encountered back early in your career in England was one of those capabilities that was going on. I think Tic-Tac, as we have talked many times in this show, is some of that technology that's being demonstrated. Just like last year when B-2s flew and dropped bombs on the Houthis. That was not to get the Houthis. That was to tell everybody in the region that B-2s can launch from the United States and make it all the way over to that part of the world and with impunity put weapons where we want to put them. And they did. That was to tell the Iranians and everybody else we have that capability.
That pivotal
Tic-Tac came out. Go ahead, Don.
That pivotal technology jump. I'm sure you guys are aware of with what happened with Xanadu's Aurora quantum computer this week. It's been explained to me. This is like the invention of the internal combustion engine, what it did to the horse and buggy, times 10. So for our viewers and listeners who may not be aware, Xanadu's Aurora quantum computer did something this week that really blew the doors wide open on computing technology. It was able to perform a task that's called the Gaussian-Boson sampling. Now, one of the most powerful computers in the world, other than this new one, was the Frontier supercomputer. And it would take the Frontier supercomputer 7 million years to complete the Gaussian-Boson sampling. This new computer did it in 2 minutes. You look at that level of computing speed, you match it up with AI, and suddenly the world is a very, very different place than it is now. And when you're talking, John, about weaponizing UAP technology and the scenario that Commander Cobra has just outlined, where somebody is saying, okay, that's it. They're so far ahead. If we don't act now, we're not going to be able to act ever. Now, what's that going to say to a nation like China who might decide if we're going to go for Taiwan, we got to do it right now, because 5 years from now we might not be able to if this thing's synced up into weaponry.
It's not going to be 5 years. Most people, again, this is partly the press's fault, and the American people don't really want to know. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but they're about to put the first supercomputer fab online in Arizona that's owned by the Taiwanese company. It's about to go online in the fall. Once that goes online in Arizona, Taiwan's not important anymore. They're going to open up Intel's opening one, the Taiwanese company's opening one. There's a third one that the Taiwanese are going to open in Arizona. There's a fourth one the Taiwanese are going to open in Ohio. They put it on hold because they're getting so good at these super chips that they don't need the fourth facility yet. But the Intel one's going on shortly afterwards. Then the third one's already started to be built in Arizona also. So once these chips are being made in the United States, we control the one thing the Chinese want. They joked about it on TV today. That was one of the things that was in the bargaining table, supposedly. And the response back to the Chinese was, well, we'll give you one of our chips when you give us your supersonic missile that you said you developed. And they're like, no. So, well, the joke was, we're not going to give you our best stuff. You're not going to get ours. But we can go one step further. Those supersonic missiles, you know why they go supersonic? You know, Commander?
I think I do.
Tell me and I'll tell you if that's what I was told.
So when you enter that realm, you can't predict the intercept path very well. So it becomes very difficult to do the intercept.
Mm-hmm. But here's the deal. Guess what they're using now? Plasma technology. That's how come they can go supersonic and they can hit target like they do.
But don't we already have missiles that are supersonic? Or are you talking hypersonic?
I'm talking the hypersonic range.
Oh, okay.
The hypersonic, yeah. They're using plasma technology now.
Okay, John, other than converting it to be stealth-like plasma, what are the things that plasma does for that missile?
That's all classified. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not going to try to sit there and tell you I know totally either. All I'm telling you is that we've had a huge advance in plasma technology, which is UAP technology. And to sit there and say that's why from the time they came out in 2017 and said disclosure was coming, I said it wasn't going to happen. Because there were two things behind it that told me it wasn't. Number one, UAP technology is not UFO technology. It's not nuts and bolts, what we've been conditioned to believe in, crafts coming from outer space, visiting from other planets, coming down here with some kind of biological being or whatever you want to call it. UAP technology is completely different than that. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say that doesn't exist, that there isn't other biological life out in the universe, but I don't really believe that they've ever gotten here. And if they have, then whatever happened, something happened to them and they no longer exist. But
so, John, I want to interrupt you because I know where you're going, and we've talked about this before. But to clarify, am I understanding you correct that the aerial phenomena that you are referring to isn't necessarily anything of extraterrestrial origin? It could be. We're not discounting that, but we're talking breakthroughs that have been so far, that have just gone so far down a particular avenue that is what is the whole mass suppression and misdirection and deception of information as we've seen over the last few decades.
Well, I can tell you this, okay? When Rendlesham happened, they had a guy down there that was a scientist that was studying the UAP stuff that's there in Rendlesham. There's UAPs, not ourselves that we've made. There's energy field down there, and there's UAPs that are there, and they were studying them, okay? A couple other people that understand UAPs pretty well have said they've taken it and put them together. So the UAPs are different. Now, according to Condyne, they're intelligent in nature. They're able to do all these capabilities, just like what Tic Tac was seeing, right? Now, remember, people want to discredit this in the ufology world. The pilots identified it as drones. Now, it was funny how the UFO world said, oh, they just misidentified it. Well, that's what the government says. What people are seeing, they're misidentifying. And then when the pilots identify it as drones, a fleet of them, then the UFO people say no. What I'm saying is for sure, UAPs are not UFOs. They're not what we've been conditioned about on TV. The aliens are coming. They're coming in craft. They're going to invade us, and they're going to eat us or take us over. This is a different type of technology. And the fact of the matter is that we are weaponizing it, okay? And here's where it gets dicey, which I'm digging into now and I'm trying to get more information on. It could be very well who we are. It could actually be our evolution from the future.
Time travel, John?
No. We are going to evolve, Chris. We are not going to be the human container in the future. And that's going to be real hard for people to accept. We have a consciousness, okay? That's what's in our body. And when we die, the body gets put in the ground or cremated or whatever. The consciousness leaves, but it doesn't go with the body. And there's a chance this UAP is actually consciousness itself, which is tied into what you might want to say, tick off people in religion somewhat, but the divine field itself. Now,
all right, we got a question in chat that I think is pretty right up with what you're talking about. Do you think it could be interdimensional? And he also asked about time travel. Okay,
time travel is what we just talked about.
Right.
Time dilation bubbles, you alter time and space, okay? That's what they showed in Star Trek. The ship that could go and take off and go into warp drive created a time dilation bubble, which protected the ship, and it could go to those speeds. That's why I'm saying those new missiles are using the same technology. Some of our aircraft that they're working on now are going to be able to fly that fast because of this. What most people don't know, again, because it didn't get highly covered, those last hearings that they just had when they had the two pilots there and Gresh, okay, they submitted one of the, you guys all know about the 38 DIRTS papers, right? Does everybody know about those papers?
Explain it to the audience.
Okay, the DIRTS papers have a history to me, okay? And what I mean by that is simply there was money allotted to study UAP technology and how we could utilize it and the effects it would have on humans and everything else. There's 38 papers. They're called the DIRTS papers. Okay. McCain helped me get my settlement. As soon as I got my settlement, the group that helped me get my settlement that was involved in my settlement, some of these scientists and stuff, went straight to his committee, and these papers were allegedly classified. And this is where it gets dicey for me. I saw these papers before they got given to McCain. When I went down and met with Al Putoff and was at his facility, I saw these papers and was told about them. Now, allegedly, when the FOIA was done, after they met with the committee, these papers at that point were classified confidential and they got declassified, or somewhat. And if you know classification, there's different layers. You get a paper written in top secret that you won't see at all. But if you've got secret clearance, you see some of the paper written in the secret format and then the confidential format and then declassified. And they usually never declassify top secret, or definitely the above top secret stuff, the SAP stuff never gets declassified. It may get knocked down in classification, but you don't see it, and very few people will ever see it. So this whole thing was studied and was allotted money, and part of it had to do with Harry Reid and the money he was giving Bigelow's group. And as soon as they started uncovering this stuff, he wanted to do what with it? Put it in an SAP program, okay? So go back to what we're talking about with stealth technology, UAPs, and everything else. The government knows about this. Bearden, Lieutenant Colonel Building, this goes back into the 80s. The Russians were ahead of us in some of these areas, and Putoff showed up and ran Stargate. And these different guys that are still driving this today, this started back in the 60s and 70s, and they've been in and out of this because we joked earlier about, well, it's probably going to go away for a while and it'll come back again. So that's why I always believed the other part, the disclosure, was never going to happen, because the government's never going to tell us what we know about this technology. what we have,
absolutely.
what we don't have. So when these guys came out and said they're going to force disclosure, first of all, they were in the jobs that they could have done something about it and they didn't. Then they come out and they want to put pressure on these other guys that are now in their positions who they know will never, ever give up the secrets. Okay. And they also know this technology is not, we're not going to tell, we may deceive the enemy of what we have, just like we did with the Manhattan Project, but we're never going to let them know exactly what we have. We may fool them with smoke and mirrors, do different things, different technology. If you know the history of the Manhattan Project, and Commander, you know this, right? The original bomb didn't work, but they kept it going and they tricked the Russians into working on that particular bomb for years while we developed the bomb that we exploded. So we were already 3 steps ahead of the Russians in nuclear capabilities when the Russians first became nuclear. So this is a constant game that goes on. The other factor was when Lou came out, which we've never seen his papers, they verified Gresh is who he says he is, and I've spoken to him for a couple hours. But they've never really shown who Lou really is, other than to say he was counter intel. Well, all you got to do is go back into the 80s. Who was the counter intel person that was the point on all of this in the 80s? Do you remember, Commander?
I don't.
Richard Doty. He was counter intel for the government. So now Lou stepped up and took that spot. But the whole thing was, we can use this as a deception to the enemy, what we do or don't have. Because I guarantee you, those videos that came out, if the enemy wasn't even already aware of them, they were studying the heck out of them. And they were trying to decide, is it us or something else? Okay? So there's a deception program going on. We're not going to get disclosure. We never will. Okay? And the ultimate gain is what we talked about a few minutes ago. They want money for this exotic technology to advance our technology capabilities.
I want to bring up
go ahead.
here, you had mentioned, and so many questions in my head right now, but the Salas event, and that's 1967, I think.
67, yes.
Yeah. So
Maelstrom.
he was speaking this week on another program, and he took an hour to refute the Wall Street Journal article. And one of the things he was saying is that the means of communication between the various concrete and steel bunkers are with 8-inch diameter cables that are triple shielded against EMP. He seemed to think that the story seemed to imply that they had erected this tower, this 60-foot tower, to try to direct an electromagnetic pulse to disable the missiles. But would that not also have, my understanding of the way EMP works is it fries the circuits, and that they would all have to be replaced. And that would take so much time that there's no way they could have gotten them back online within 72 hours like they did.
Well, okay, let's take that right there, because this is something that he's trying to play devil's advocate, and it's not true. So you're going to tell me these aliens showed up, and the story is they wanted to take our systems offline, right? Mm-hmm. So they wanted to send us a message, take our systems offline, so we knew what they could do, right? So they were able to go in there on their own and knock the systems off for 72 hours so we could bring them back up. This advanced technology could come and knock these systems out, but we could bring them back in 72 hours. Actually, what's more logical is we were now in another stage of nuclear capabilities and explosions and bombs and EMP bombs themselves. And we knew that what the equipment we had, we were vulnerable possibly to a certain EMP effect, which may not have even been a bomb, but it could have been what they've developed. They have this stuff now, they move it around in vehicles, they have weapons. I don't know if you just saw at the Pope's funeral, they showed a rifle that no one knew existed that they can use on drones now. Right. That uses EMP pulse stuff. So the fact is, the more logical answer to that would be, we were testing it, we knew what we were going to do to see if it would bring it down the way it did. And we were prepared to bring it right back online again. Not that the aliens came and zapped our systems and we were immediately able to fix it.
And one more point there, John.
Yeah.
We test this kind of capability at home before we deploy it in the field against our enemy.
Kirkland. Most of it gets tested at Kirkland. Okay.
But what I'm getting at is before you're going to try to take this out on some expedition someplace else, you want to be able to measure that capability. That's what Tic Tac was. It was a very public demonstration for the world to see it. And if you go along with the fact that the military is going to use, or the government's going to use, a deception program, you play that up. Just like 2 to 3 years ago when all the drones were flying over the ships off the coast of California, and the sailors were allowed to take pictures with their cell phones, and they were sending that stuff out, and they were swarming around the ships.
Swarm drones.
And then they all disappeared. The lights went out. No one could figure where they went, but there was another cargo type ship in the area. Come on. We just saw what happened in Russia.
But Commander, I'm not giving up anything classified because they put it online now. Right. They don't have to drop them from the ship. The airplanes can drop them. The C-140. Sure. The C-17 will actually fly with the F-35s, and when the F-35s get closer to mission, they'll drop the drones with them. The helmet can control it. The pilots can control these drones. They can actually have their own armada of drones with these strike groups now and stuff. Right. So, and it doesn't have to come from the ground. Even it could come from the air. And that's the other thing. Even back in 1980, we had satellite capabilities, and it's so far advanced now. People always think that whatever, we can create these effects with the satellites too. But getting back to the Salas stuff, right? I was guilty of what he's saying, but he either is just being deliberate because he wants to keep the story going the way it has. When I had my incident happen, when we went out there that first night, what we saw, we could not explain. And we did not want to explain it. We did not want to deal with it when we went back. We did not want to go in front of our chain of command. It wasn't career enhancing to be involved in something that could be labeled UFOs. Okay? And we got told to shut up. I was happy, went on my way until it got leaked out. But the point being is, I didn't think it was our stuff either. But I've done a lot of research since then. And now people have claimed that I'm a government. No, I'm not. I provide the evidence in this first book, the second book, and the third book. What we're doing with UAP technology, how it's evolving, who's working on it, what countries are involved in this and where they're going with this, because it is a race just like the Manhattan Project started. This is the new Manhattan Project that's now starting to come out. Now, the other reason why they showed this stuff is because they're testing it on our military, which they were disingenuous with the Nimitz, but I understand partly why, because Kevin Day finally had to admit that our radars, and you tell me, Commander, can they be manipulated by countermeasures?
Of course they can.
Right, but they denied that they were, but that what they saw was real, but that could have very well been UAP technology as a countermeasure making the radar think, because think about what happens. When that radar sees that, it can't lock on it or do anything with our sensor capability. And then he went on when I was interviewing him and said, well, it's a good thing our planes weren't armed. I go, yeah, that's why they were testing it on you. He goes, because he said what they encountered where it came to the rendezvous point, if they would have fired the missile at it, it would have actually went at it, had nothing to hit, and would have turned around and done what, Commander? It would have took the aircraft out that fired the missile.
It could.
Right. I'm just saying it could be utilized as a countermeasure to force the missile back on our own.
I would be more concerned what you're alluding to, John, that you fire the missile, and now your Tic Tac in this particular case has the ability to take the harness, take over its guidance, and drive it to where you want to go.
Well, that's possible too, but if it goes cloak, which what we talked about, which slows down or speeds up, it's not there no more. What the sensors are locking in on can no longer lock in on it, right?
Right.
And then what's it do? It goes to the next heat source, right?
Yeah, but generally it's not those are very linear weapons. It's not like a sub where, we fire a torpedo and they turn and they come around and they pick up the next thing. That's why you put safeties and stuff on it.
Well, I agree, but what I mean is that if you're going to, you were saying earlier about testing the drones on the aircraft and swarm drones, right?
Right.
You would test it on us. I laid out in my op-ed when I said, Congress, stop hiding behind classified, take care of the people that are injured by this stuff, right?
Right.
The bottom line is they've tested on military personnel from back in the 30s, all the way forward with our technology. Who has the best technology in the world? The United States does. How are you going to learn how if this technology is going to work, but to test it on our technology? The F-117, which the British submitted later, which in 1977 was testing, at that time they had the best radar systems in the world. And they were testing the F-117 out of Machrihanish in Scotland, and they were testing it on the British radar systems. And they saw it one day. And then that started, the British did not know we had that aircraft. And that's when they started getting read into the new stealth stuff. But the point being is we test this stuff all the time. So to sit there and say every single strange encounter that happens is alien based. And by the way, the Maelstrom incident and all the nuclear stuff, that all the nuclear facilities that had their incidents fall into a UAP event, not a craft coming down and landing or hovering over the area. It was balls of light doing different things. And then you go back and you go back and look at the systems that were involved. The SAGE system can create those effects, and they can use radars to control plasmas and move them around and use them as countermeasures.
Actually, you're spot on, John, because what this article says, the Air Force developed an exotic electromagnetic generator that's
the MARC system. It's the MARC system, but it's been advanced because, like, radar, one of the first radar systems was straight line radar, right? So I met with the guy in DC when I was out there for a conference. I was there with Linda, and we had dinner together. And he said, "I'm really interested in your case." And I said, "Why?" He said, this was back when they didn't protect the radar operators. He said, my entire crew's dead. I survived cancer. I'm in remission. But all the effects you were describing, encountering, we encountered with the radar system. And he said, you could go look up straight line radar and check it out. They've admitted it exists, but what operates and makes it work is still classified because part of it's still being utilized in the radar systems that have advanced from straight line radar. So this equipment constantly evolves. They learn from what, like they had the death ray, then they got radar, then they got this system and that system, and they advance it. They have to test it. They have to test it on our equipment, okay? And they do that, and yet all this stuff, anything strange it's a UFO. That's a perfect cover for the government, just like at Area 51 and these other facilities. Somebody sees something strange, it goes right back to the UFO thing. No one wants to touch it after that. Guess what? Rendlesham, the cover story was on Rendlesham 24 hours after the event. Aliens landed.
Right.
They sent a guy downtown and were telling the people that were UFO people because they didn't think they could contain the full story because so many people were involved in it and different flights were, and it would leak out. They went down and immediately spread the story that UFOs were involved. It was UFOs that landed at the forest.
So John, was Roswell in this line of thinking? Was Roswell on purpose, or was it an accident when they first came out and said alien UFO?
Well, I don't know, because here's the interesting story about Roswell. You were aware of what went active 2 weeks before Roswell happened, right?
Well, I know lots of reports that they talked about in that area and other areas around it, plus the balloon activity that had.
No, but that new radar system just went on. They had a triangular radar system that they had been working on the East Coast, but it was causing too much problems, so they moved it down to and made it operational down there by Roswell. And it was down in that whole New Mexico area where a lot of stuff goes on. Probably, reality-wise, that area is higher up in the chain of testing and stuff that goes on than even Area 51 or Skunk Works area, because of it's just so isolated and stuff. But that is a good question because of the balloon activity and all that other stuff. What because here's the thing that happened. The base announced that what was it called? Department of War the base commander, something happened locally, the press picked it up and he said it was alien. Well, if it was something we had or were working on, he may have really thought it was.
Right.
So, and in that case, they had to come back and deny it because they actually had something that they had, and they had to cover it up. But it could have been one way or another. But if you go back to World War II, go back to the Foo Fighters. That's when they started showing up, is because of radar.
Go back to World War I. Everybody loves to about World War II. There was activity in World War I.
Right. And then also the Germans had plasma cannons. They were shooting at our aircraft in World War II when the Foo Fighters started showing up.
Do you think that was the Foo Fighters, John, the plasma cannons?
I did a thing on it. And yeah, I mean, the people that watched it said it makes sense. It was being generated. Radars will create plasmas. And then once they create them, they will then bounce off the radar pings in the way the radar works, and they'll float around. Now, if the Germans are shooting plasma balls up at these aircraft too, they're going to latch onto the radars and fly around. Okay? And remember, that was an interesting time. If the Germans had one more year, we may not be where we're at today, because they were really close to the nuclear weapon. The jet fighter was just coming out. The rocket system, they were making quick advances on being able to fire rockets and everything else. So to sit there and say that Wall Street Journal piece is garbage just shows you how naive the UFO world is. And there's more than enough evidence that UAPs are real. The United States government has admitted it. Congress is investigating it. But people want to stick with, there's a craft, we've got an alien craft somewhere. Maybe we do, but where's it at? And all these guys that come forward, I love the line, "Trust me, bro. Trust me. We've got an alien craft somewhere." Now I don't.
Where?
I know, and even Bigelow claimed they may have had one, but if they did, why would he admit it? Because think about it. If we did, Commander, have really an alien craft somewhere, do we want the Russians to know where we have it?
Of course not.
Of course. But here's the interesting thing, and I'm not a big fan of Nick Pope anymore, but he made a comment that stuck with me because he was doing a presentation one time that I was sitting through, and he showed this particular aircraft the British are working on, and I forget what it is, but it's operational now. He said, we don't necessarily have a UFO in a hangar, but we have UFO technology in our aircraft, which then goes back again to UAP technology. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to show, and I'm trying to show all the interest that they had in me and all the people and scientists that came forward. Do you remember the movie with Phenomenon with John Travolta?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was me, for real, with those scientists coming after me and trying to study me, get my DNA and do all that stuff. I went through all that. And part of it was they kept me alive, but that was partly what I had to go through to stay alive, because they were studying me because of what I encountered in Rendlesham Forest.
So, John, I mean, think back to the 50s when we lined up divisions of infantry and then detonated atomic weapons on the surface and had them come up out of those foxholes and run towards the detonation site.
Right.
We tested LSD on
MK Ultra
soldiers and Army. And the reason they wanted to use Army soldiers is because they had better medical records and they were in better physical entry health to compare what was going on. For all the whatever reasons that we were interested in, everything from the super soldier to just trying to understand what it was gonna do.
Right.
The releasing of course, this is one that's going to hit close to home for those of us that have been around for the last decade. But we're releasing common cold flu type weapons in New York subway system to track how it was moving around in that urban area. So, I mean, this is a fairly horrible thing that goes on. It fits, and I, like you, when I read the Wall Street Journal, and it's not a publication I'm happy with. I don't like their slant on a lot of stuff on how they present it, but I think they're tapping onto something that is very spot on.
Well, but the only problem I have,
the nature of doing this.
Right. The only problem I have with the Wall Street Journal is if you're going to say somebody's name, if you're going to cite their incident and say their name, they should have contacted them and asked them.
Sure.
Writing this story, we would like a comment from you and put
Right.
it in there.
Even if it's no comment,
Right.
reach
Right.
out.
But there is a side story to this that you need to know, Padre. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I have had a lot of interaction with Congress, with Grish, with the Aero Committee, and everything else. And they chased me. Solace chased them. I was invited and was going to be represented by a contractor, and Commander knows the difference between a staffer that works for a committee and a contractor that works for the committee. And they are different. They have different clearances and they have different access. This particular contractor worked with Rubio's committee, which is the Senate Intelligence Committee. They wanted to bring me up there, meet with them, and meet with Aero. One of the stipulations was I had to sign a non-disclosure. I wouldn't go. Okay? I'm not going up there and be tied on what I can and can't say. I'm not going to talk about classified. I'm a military guy. I may not agree with it being classified, but I'm not going to talk about it. Okay? But ultimately, Salas chased them, and eventually they did a phone interview with them. And then what did they do? They turned around and dropped the story that they didn't even give him the courtesy of asking to respond. Okay? Now, what were they going to do with Rendlesham? They wanted me up there. They actually promised me if I went up there when I first said no, I would get to go to NORAD for a briefing and I get to meet with Hobby Lowe. And I still said no for one of the reasons is I'm not going to sign a non-disclosure unless I know what I'm getting into. And they wouldn't let my attorney go either. He was going to take me. I was going to go there and he was going to handle the whole thing. So they clearly have a huge interest in Rendlesham. And what I'm wondering is in the second report, some of it's been held back. That bothers me. And they're going to write another article. Is Rendlesham going to pop up in it?
Well, I know that Salas says that he has submitted a 3-page written rebuttal to the Wall Street Journal and requested, or to the editor who handles this subject line, and requested that they print it. So we'll have to see whether or not he does that. I have a question. I have so many, but let me just ask you this. Are you saying that the U.S. currently has portable directed EMP weapons of a scalable size so that it can be condensed into a shoulder arm?
Commander, tell
Yes.
him what you know. Yeah.
Okay, so you say testing. What would be a better way of testing this than on violent demonstrators in the streets to disable their cell phones? Because without publicity, they're nothing. Without the ability to talk to one another, they're nothing.
They don't have to use a hand.
Yeah, you don't need that to
Yeah, they've long been able to jam cell phone service or shut it down.
And quite honestly, you want to exploit every one of those phone calls.
Yeah, you actually do. You want to
That's
track those.
That's why the demonstrators are told not to bring their phones anymore to it, because you track where they went and you track where they go back to.
You can ping their phone calls, and
then you grab their list. You can probably grab the listing of the calls they made. Then you start comparing that to other calls that are there. No, that you want people running around with cell phones. You want people uploading it with metadata. That's very helpful.
So let me then switch gears now for something completely different for John. You had mentioned consciousness and that religious people might have an objection to it. How is consciousness different from a person's soul?
It basically is one and the same. But here's the scary part, Padre, and I think Commander knows about this. We're on the verge of being able to take human consciousness and put it into computers.
Yeah, I
utilize the consciousness to control the computer because they don't trust the AI. So that is what I understand: the body, the biological body, the heart, and everything. But the consciousness is what the person is.
Okay, so it's the same as the soul, is what you're saying.
Well, fine. I mean, they have taken this. How many times have we wrote the Bible? I mean, everything gets moved around all the time, and what is the real truth anymore? I mean, I'm not against religion. I believe in the Creator. I believe in all that, but there's a lot of stuff that I don't agree with religion and the way they did it back in the old days and the way it evolved and everything else. And I also know that somebody I trust very well, and I'm going to say this, I'm not going to say their name, but they work with the government, and this is what he told me. And I will tell you that, Commander, have you ever heard of Andy Marshall?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's in this book. And he was called Yoda, and he worked for the Office of Net Assessment. He ran it. He was the one that wrote the Soviet doctrine that brought the Soviet Union down. He also was involved with training all the Secretary of Defenses right up to Bill Gates. He just retired, I think it was at 15, and he died like last year, the year before. But he worked for the Net Assessment, which is a huge office involved in all this, right? Well, one of the things that's possible, and I say possible because I don't have enough proof to say one way or another, other than maybe what we're encountering with UAPs is us from the future, which Chris, you call it time travel, but it is, but it's not time travel the way that the public's been conditioned for time travel.
Time manipulation.
Right. Okay. But take the 10 Commandments, and those were governing for civilization. It wasn't so much to be utilized the way religion used it, but it was a governing thing for government, not so much for religion. Okay? And this is where it gets controversial, which is one of the reasons why, besides all the other reasons, disclosure will never work, is because take and substitute God for alien. So God created us, but we are the aliens. What is here came from somewhere else that was identified as a God because he was the creator of us. But there was I can't think of the book. I wish I would have wrote it down tonight. There's a book by a NASA physicist that wrote this, that he looked at one of Ezekiel, I think it was, or one of the chapters in the Bible, and he wanted to discredit it, but he couldn't. But it had something to do with the craft or something being seen. But the point being is that he said that was probably part of our own creation. And what Adam and Eve is not what happened and how we became here and how we've evolved. Now, I'm not going to argue against religion or for it as far as the way it's been presented to us, but I will say this, my personal opinion is religion has been used on us no differently than they use deception on us with all this military technology and everything else. And I don't mean by all the people in the military do this, and I don't mean the ministers and the people that go out and speak in front of the congregations. I'm talking about the hierarchy that started back when the Council of Nicaea, and then it started to move forward from there. And everything that they've done is to control, a small group of people can control the masses.
John, we got a question in chat. I'm going to put it up here because I've never heard of this before. Are you aware of the Habit of Dash Act that recently passed in 2025?
What is that?
I'm asking you.
I don't know either.
I've never heard of it.
Can somebody Google it?
Yeah, I'll look and see what I can come up with.
And stuff.
Okay.
John, while Commander's getting that, explain because Rendlesham did trigger what they call the ECHO protocol. Explain what the ECHO protocol is.
I don't have the book in front of me right now, but it has to do with us becoming the first chapter. The first book has to do with UAPs are real, and they're trying to weaponize it, and then are we going to become what a UAP is? Do you understand what I mean? Are we going to evolve into what UAPs are? And the thing that really caught my attention that started going down this path is simply my hypnosis, which was done in '88 before all the social media and everything else. Two things that stand out. One of them, it's online. There was a small clip that Linda used one time, and Gaia grabbed it and they put it online. the guy asked me, what are these blue lights? What is it? And I said, that's the intelligence. Now, the blue lights that we were counting was the intelligence, what we were doing, which would be like what a UAP is. But they said they're coming back for me at some point. And also, it was implied in my hypnosis that what I was encountering, possibly one of those that I was encountering, was my consciousness from the future.
Really?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that, John? That's interesting.
I can tell you what I just said. What we were dealing with was the blue lights were the intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
They were the ones that came here. They were studying us and evaluating us. They were going to come back. They specifically said when the hypnosis came out, they're coming back for me at some point. And that those blue lights very well probably were consciousness, which is what I relate to you, Padre, that evolves. So when they call it karma, right? Consciousness comes and goes in the body, supposedly comes back. Well, there's certain things that are blocked. Well, it's not totally blocked by the consciousness, it's blocked by the mind. Because what do we only use 10% of our capabilities? The mind can expand greatly on what we can do with it. But I firmly believe this, and I'm finishing up studying this, working on documents to support it. That's been one of the goals of the government and the people that control things, is to keep us from evolving, both spiritually, mentally. And unfortunately, one of the things that I talk about is they deliberately divided us religion. They deliberately created all these different religions for a reason, to keep us fighting each other all the time. Well, how can there be so many different religions that believe in a creator? These religions all believe in different ways. That this God is different. One group says God is this way, one group says God is this way, and we fight wars over that. And I firmly believe they deliberately did that to control us. Are you guys familiar with Iron Mountain? Are you familiar with it, Commander?
I've heard it, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. That follows that scenario, does it not?
Of course it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And part of it involves UFOs.
John, what's that feeling that you have that you say they're coming back for you?
What do I
that must
feel?
be kind of frightening, though, isn't it?
I mean, when I came out of the hypnosis, everybody's staring at me with open mouths.
Yeah,
So
I would be too.
It happened. I came out, and my wife at the time was sitting there looking at me like, "What?" And I don't know. I mean, the government's interested in me. I mean, there's enough evidence that they've studied me. They've taken my tissue, they've taken my blood, they've analyzed my DNA, they've done all this stuff. They've openly admitted, this group, that they put 100 people into a study to study the DNA. They've done MRIs on brains to see, the people that have had these interactions, what's different about the brain, or is there something different? They're definitely interested in this, but again, it all comes back to control. They want to control, a small group of people want to control the masses.
Did any of those tests found any type of abnormality that the doctors couldn't explain? Did they say, John, this is what's going on, but we've never seen this before?
Well, okay, this is where I believe in hypnosis more than I trust what I was told. But I'll just lay this out for you, okay? And this was done in the lab in Pennsylvania. I've got the report. I talked to the person that ran the tests. It came through Gary Nolan.
John, we're good enough friends. I take what you say to the bank.
No, but I don't trust what came out of this, okay? What happened was simply, they got when I had my heart surgery, that's when they got my tissue, my blood. They ran all that stuff because I wouldn't give it to the group, Nolan's group. I wouldn't give it to them. I didn't trust them, right? Well, I found out afterwards, and I did get a couple documents before those got locked down, that confirms that the government studied my tissue. John Alexander confirmed that. And you want to learn about Padre, you want to learn about weapons, Go look at his work. Have you seen it, Commander?
I have.
He talks about where we were and where we're going with the EMP weapons. So Green came and visited me. I don't know if you know who Christopher Green is. He was CIA.
Yep.
He's a doctor and all that. So he was involved in all of this with the government and everything. So then he came and visited me. And when he came to me, he said, all right, I want your DNA. But when they tried to get it the first time and I declined, they wanted my blood. But they took it when they did the surgery. This time they wanted a spit test. And they wanted to put me in the study for the 100 people. Okay. But I told him I wouldn't do it I would only do it under one condition because I already knew they had it. I wanted him, I'm adopted, so I don't know my family history. And my son wanted to know my family history. So he agreed to take my son's and my DNA and send it to a lab in Pennsylvania and have it analyzed as long as I would give a sample to go to this 100-person test, which we never got told what came of it, where it went, or anything else. So sent it off. A couple months later, I got a phone call. Green told me to sit down. I said, why? I just woke up. What's going on? He goes, well, your DNA samples came back. All right. What sets the big deal? Why couldn't you send me the report? He said, you're a rare bloodline. Your wife's a rare bloodline, which they confirmed later. And they knew this because the mitochondrial DNA is what they ran, which ties back to the mother. But they ran my bloodline also. We both had rare bloodlines that created Caden, who had no heritage. He was a new bloodline. Now, Nolan said that that's real. People come together and they create new bloodlines, right? Which is not anything from any continent or anything else.
Right.
And the other thing was, he said, both his mother and mine bloodline, because they got a sample from her, go back to Christ's time. So they're implying something to do with our evolution and everything else. And I'm saying this, that's what I've been told. But to do those tests again, at the time they did them were $10,000. They're $20,000 a piece. I don't have $60,000 laying around right now. And also you have to talk about chain of custody, and you know what I mean by that, Commander. I'd want to go into the laboratory, have the sample taken and analyzed right in front of me.
Sure.
Because once it goes out of your sight, they could do whatever they wanted with it. Not saying they would, but it's just, some of this stuff is so crazy.
Being skeptical is not a bad thing at this point, John.
Right. But that's where a lot of this is going, which will create chaos.
To what end?
Okay, if they came back tomorrow and said everything we've been told for thousands of years isn't true about God, how we were created and everything else, how well would that sit, Padre?
Well, for those of us who have truly experienced him in our lives, we would know it to be a false statement.
Well, I have experienced him. In fact, there's a good chance that's partly what we encountered out there. And I can honestly say to you, my belief is I think we've been lied to about who the creator is as far as how we became here. Not that we don't have a God, not that we don't have a creator, not that we exist obviously, but the way we've been taught is not the way it took place.
All right, John, we're at the end. So here's what I got to ask before Chris takes us to the end of the show. We have to pick this up. When you can do this again, we've got to get together again to flesh this out when you're available. Because
Okay.
I mean, the chemistry is just too good here with the four of us, and hopefully Don's back, and you know Don a long time. We need to go a little bit further with this because I think you touched on a lot of very important areas.
A lot.
Right, and basically, guys, what I'm saying is this is where the research has taken me in my encounter. Does that make me, Chris, you called me on Sunday, I'm an expert. I don't like the word expert at all. I'm not an expert, but I had an experience.
A man in knowledge.
Okay, I had an experience like Contact when she said, I have an experience, I can't explain it, and I'm going to do everything in my power from that point on to understand what it was and how it is. And I'm trying to lay this out. Now, there are people out there that won't agree with me, fine. But at least have an open enough mind to look at everything and don't just take what you were told as verbatim. And that's like with the Wall Street Journal. I think there's truth in it, and I think that ultimately that we've been lied to, as humanity's been lied to. Did you find out what that guy was talking about real fast, Commander? Before we
Actually, we got to wrap right there, because I agree with you. We've been lied to, and I agree with the Commander, and I'm sure Dan feels the same way. We got to have you back on, because this is just going so much, and we can do 3 shows about all this. John, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
It's been an amazing show.
Happy Father's Day to all the fathers. It started with some really good ones here.
Yeah, happy Father's Day.
That is correct. And folks, please, when you get a chance, get his book with Toby Martinez, Signals from the Threshold, The Hidden Race for UAP Technology. You will be blown away. I have a copy of it. I was blown away. And I'll tell you, it was some of the best reading. Amazon.com, right, John?
Yeah, Amazon.com. And Chris, send me whatever that guy asked about. I want to look into it. There's very few things that I haven't heard of or don't even have a clue to what it is. That was one of them.
All right, folks, that's our show for tonight. Thank you for watching, and we'll get John back. Have a great night.